just because you don't have an MBA does not make you any less of a founder or any less qualified to be a founder.
Welcome back to Female Founder World. I'm your host, Jasmine Garnsworthy, and today's conversation is with Emily Elyse Miller, founder of OffLimits. Hi, Elyse. Welcome to the show. For folks who haven't heard of OffLimits, could you maybe introduce the brand, introduce yourself, and share a couple of milestones to let people know where you're at right now in the founder story?
Yeah, so OffLimits is a defiant new cereal brand. I say that because the name is OffLimits. One of our taglines is break the rules starting with breakfast. And we'd never put you in a box. Boxes are for cereal. So out the gate, we're kind of showing up with this very art-driven, cereal culture inducing style to us. We have offensively delicious flavors. So think all the fun characters, colors, flavors that are the nostalgic classic cereals we grew up with, but with an ingredient panel that could be in any health food store. So we're entirely plant-based, gluten-free, kosher, organic, like all of the things that tick the boxes there from a sustainability standpoint as well. My background is on the food side too. So developing this recipe with thoughtful ingredients and an ingredient panel was really important to me. So really proving that you can have fun and have a healthy cereal.
Awesome. And you've certainly pulled off that mission. I love what you guys have created. Could you tell a little bit about your background and how you came to be a founder?
Yeah, my background is the freelance hustle. So very, very chaotic. And in hindsight, realizing all the random projects and things I've done over my career have been exactly what I needed to do in order to start this business. So whatever anyone out there is doing right now, it's probably the right thing. Even if you don't think it is right now, it's going to help you at some point in the long run. I started my career in fashion. I went to school for fashion design in New York City and have been in New York ever since. I was really fascinated by the trend forecasting side of the industry more, mostly because I hadn't done a ton of traveling growing up, and that was such an ambition of mine. I wanted to be able to travel all over the world. So I was focused more on the trend forecasting, started freelancing and writing for tons of media outlets, starting with WGSN, and they needed a way to kind of talk about food because a lot of trend forecasting was focused just on fashion. So I started talking about food, and that kind of took off and was doing a lot more editorial projects and traveling. And in that experience, I was in a lot of cities by myself for extended periods of time. So I started a series called BreakfastClub, where I would get creative people together to share a one-time only kind of special morning breakfast. And I worked with chefs who don't normally serve breakfast. So think about a Michelin star chef who just has a tasting menu creating their dream family style kind of friends breakfast. So it was this incredible experience. I did 40 plus events around the world. And that led to a cookbook deal with Phaidon. So I then spent the next 3 years researching, developing, and writing a 380 recipe cookbook about traditional breakfast recipes around the world. So stuck with the breakfast theme really hard and now continuing into cereal that stands.
So how did you actually come up with the idea, and where did you see that there was this gap? Because looking at the business, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such an obvious, I can't believe no one was doing this. Of course, this business should exist. But what is it that made you see that there was this space?
Just my organic obsession with breakfast and art and kind of design in that way. And I love cereal culture so much. Yet when I was younger, it had so much sugar and bad ingredients. And my mom was super healthy. Thankfully, too, she cared about all of that stuff, but I wasn't allowed to have any of the fun cereals with mascots on it. So I feel like it was always a little inside of me to be jealous of cereal culture. So I just reinvented it and made it myself, but for a very modern conversation. I mean, I could talk for hours about the characters. The characters actually came before the flavors. And the whole brand was just inspired by looking at the cereal aisle, seeing such a stark difference between Kellogg's and Kashi, and literally nothing in the middle. And there's been a few cereal startups come out, which is awesome to see the space being recognized a little bit more, and hopefully some market share being taken away by some of the bigger brands who just were not listening to what consumers wanted. But we are the only cereal brand that has launched with a super clean, like Whole Foods label, and the character story and the storytelling, and like bringing the culture of cereal back to life.
Could you tell us a little bit about the characters and the character story for people who haven't shopped with you, haven't been on the website or seen your social? What's all that about?
Yeah, so the characters, I have the boxes here, so I'll show you. They're basically all inspired by the like dramatic exaggerations, I guess, of creative people's personality, maybe coming more from myself and just a lot of people that I know, and the struggles that everyone is kind of dealing with just from like a human emotional cycle perspective too. So the first character is Dash. So she's the first ever female cereal mascot in American cereal history, which is absurd that we were the first ones to do that, but very proud that we are, especially since I'm a female founder. So Dash is the side hustle for your side hustle, always trying to like work and succeed and do all of these things. And because you can't see Dash right now, she is a bunny in like an 80s power suit that I imagine to be like vintage Mugler or something, with like super hype sneakers. And she's just like the really cool friend who just like has it together when it comes to work. But her kind of downside is that pressure to succeed and just stress of like always having to like be successful. So then the kind of counter to the Dash personality is Zombie. So Zombie is your super chill friend, probably skates, probably is a gamer, maybe does art, always there to help kind of chill you out and just have a super relaxed kind of weekend. You know what's funny? I always do this. I didn't even talk about the flavor. I literally always talk about Dash is a coffee flavor, so it makes sense for her personality because she needs to be like hyped up all the time. So we use Intelligentsia coffee, so all really good quality ingredients, even from the flavor perspective.
Awesome. You speak with such passion about those characters. I can see that it's something that like comes very much from you. How did you go from you've got this idea, and who did you need to partner with to kind of bring that vision to life, and what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I am an art school kid who was like, I'm going to raise a bunch of money and start a business because it's cereal and we're going up against some of the biggest CPG brands in the universe. So I knew I needed to raise money. So I took a bunch of classes from Harvard Business School to some startup classes, read books, really dove into the business side of everything that I needed to know. And that was like, 6 to 8 months of just like power trying to learn and make these connections to raise money and start the business. And then cereal production, manufacturing, like all of it, even the development, like everything costs 10 times more than you expect it to, takes 10 times longer than you expect it to. So I know everybody says that, but it is truly just facts. There's no way of getting around it. And the design process for all of this was insane. So when I brought up the raising money part because I don't have an MBA. I wasn't going to walk into these meetings with some insane resume and a ton of bootstrapping money from my family or like close friends. So I needed to bring an A-list crew to the table when it came to design and the marketing of the brand. So I mentioned my cookbook before, and one of the partners at Pentagram designed my cookbook through Phaidon, through the publisher, and I became close with her through the process. Told her I was starting a cereal brand. She was obsessed with it. And Pentagram, Astrid Stavro at the UK office decided to take on the project. So I was walking in with Pentagram doing our design and branding. And then in a similar kind of relationship building way, I knew Shepard Fairey and his studio in LA. So they were actually helping me to try and find a designer. And then I don't know, the light bulb went on and they're like, wait, we need to do this. So I was like, yes, obviously that would have been the number one choice. So they designed all of the characters. And then over time, we've just kind of built this really incredible crew of designers and creatives. We just started doing animated content. So think like Adult Swim 2D animation, really bringing these characters to life in a new way. So we partnered with Team Legend, a Miami-based animation studio, to do that. And now we have this really cool kind of ecosystem to bring these characters to life.
Awesome. So you've walked into the meetings, you've been successful, you've raised the money. What was your go-to-market plan? Did you launch purely, you're thinking, okay, we're going to be D2C, this is going to be an e-commerce business. What was your plan when you first got started?
I mean, so my background was events. I'm a pretty hands-on person. I love gathering people together. And the first event we did pre-COVID to just have people test the cereal was a gallery show at Shepard Fairey's studio Subliminal Gallery in LA. And people were walking around, eating the cereal out of dispensers, shopping art. We partnered with a bunch of artists. It was all to support school art programs. And then COVID hit and we were supposed to be launching like right around then. So it was really difficult time to navigate. We ended up pushing our launch to be in July of last year. And then we were a digitally native brand. So I had to kind of figure out what that would look like for the business as well. And all while trying to update recipe, figure out the supply chain. We sold out of cereal. So we were like, okay, none of the workers are at the factory. Everything is so kind of up in the air. So this past year has just been absolutely wild to navigate. And I think a true test of entrepreneurs, like you just have to be flexible because any plan you have is going to change.
Absolutely.
So I learned that through events. Like you can have the most perfect event and everything planned. And I'm just always waiting for the big ball to drop. And it always does. So as long as you're prepared for it, it's not a big deal.
I can definitely see that similarity between events and entrepreneurship where things change on the fly and you really have to be able to adapt. And, you know, I've definitely heard a lot about from different founders, particularly, you know, in the beauty industry, to be honest, about supply chain issues during 2020. So good on you for getting through that. That's a really difficult time to launch a brand.
Yeah, you know, especially the everything going on during that time too, even aside from COVID, was really contentious. And we're this new brand, like no one wants to hear about a brand right now, but our whole vision is so authentic, and the way that OffLimits is exactly break the rules. Like, let's be smart in the way we talk about things and like be very community oriented. It didn't come from a like, oh, now we have to like pivot to do this. Like this was always kind of part of our plan. So yeah, we kind of came together as a team to do a lot of community building events during that time, especially as we were trying to kind of navigate how to launch. Like no one knew who we were. So, and we didn't have tons and tons of money to like dump into ads and be a truly digitally native brand. So we were trying to figure out all of these different ways to connect with people. One of the fun things that we did actually was, it was all over TikTok. We caught it like pretty early when all of the NYU students were coming back to campus and had to quarantine for the fall semester. Like, I don't know, NYU really messed up their food schedules and they were just being fed like the most ridiculously gnarly food I've ever seen. Like a lot of people who were vegan were getting like steak on their salad and just, it was so crazy. So we like jumped on it really fast. Our social media manager is amazing and like somehow got into the like new student NYU text group. So we were like, anyone who wants cereal, we're doing like drop-offs. And we just like made a kit of our mini boxes of cereal and sent it to like all the kids. And I was on my skateboard and she was like going on to these different locations of all of the dorms. It was really fun. So we did a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's really clever. So what is mentioned a social media manager. What does the team look like at the moment? Are you a year old now? Is that how old the company is?
We're a year old, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're a humble team of 3. So we're doing a lot. but very strategically. Yeah, Davi is our social media manager. And then Michelle is kind of in the same position as me, where she's just doing it all and like jumping in where it needs to be. So she's done everything from like marketing to supply chain to now she's kind of working on sales as we work on our big kind of retail push for our single serve mini boxes.
How did you go about recruiting? I feel like that's such a difficult thing when you're an early kind of company and people don't really know who you are and what you're doing. How did you recruit those first team members?
It's super difficult. We're hiring right now, and we really need to grow a bit. But we're really particular about who we bring on because it is such a kind of ecosystem. Michelle, I met through a mutual friend, like very, very early on. So she's been with me really from the beginning, and we just clicked. She had a lot of opposing skill sets, but we really aligned on the type of brand we wanted to build. And then Davi is a family friend of Michelle. She was, I think, working at a movie theater or something at the time and started interning for us. And we were like, oh my God, she has the best voice and just crushes all of our haters on social. It's really funny. So she really understands what we're trying to do as well. So we're a nice little unit in that way.
Are you guys based out of New York?
Yeah, based out of New York, but we're pretty remote right now. So as we're hiring right now, we're putting asks out to a lot of friends we know on social. I think the best way, if you're somebody who is looking to get hired, especially by the kind of smaller creative driven brands, it's always through social media. Like send a DM to me, send a DM to like people on the team, show that you're paying attention to the things that we're posting. Like we put a lot of job descriptions in Slack channels. So any kind of Slack channels that people can join that have job postings, which most of them do.
Oh, awesome. Can you recommend any good ones?
I'd have to get back to you on that. Michelle was really the one who I think spread it to more of the like open Slack channels. But as we're part of an incubator, so we post in the incubator. I'm part of a few like consumer goods kind of Slack channels as well. So once you are kind of circulated and all the founders and all the people at these kind of smaller CPG companies talk and get referrals from each other. So if you're also a new founder or a brand kind of trying to break in, I think you'd be surprised at how much smaller brands are willing to help you, and not even smaller brands as they grow, because they've been exactly where you are. And I could not have done this without the just complete generosity and support of other brands.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like other founders, that's such a good resource to kind of help you grow, like tapping into that network. I mean, that's what this podcast is, what we're trying to do, because honestly, the best people to learn from are the people who are doing what you're doing are just a few steps ahead of you.
Exactly.
So as you've grown and as the business has grown, you've mentioned that before, when you were raising money, you were taking some classes, reading business books. Are there any like specific resources that you recommend that you're like, okay, this book or this podcast, like this is a great place to go if you want to start a company or grow your company?
Yes. So I forgot how I got referred to this woman. Her name is Brooke, and she has a startup 101 kind of class on how to raise with a focus on raising money. And it's called Class Rebel. And I think she's always kind of done an online version of her class, but if you can go in person, she has gone through the process. She had her own fund. Like she's been on kind of all sides of the industry. And I felt she was just really approachable and broke everything down in a way that didn't seem so scary and overwhelming. And that this is something that everybody goes through, because this whole side of the industry is gate kept like insanely. So I remember it really took me a minute. Like it took over a year for us to raise a small amount of capital. But when you go to business school, you kind of walk out of school with those contacts. Like, you know, people who are in venture, you know how money works in that way and how to kind of get it, what they're looking for. But when you go to school or all of your friends are artists and creatives, it's not as easy. I do a lot of things that I feel like other brands can't, who didn't have the experience I did. So just because you don't have an MBA does not make you any less of a founder or any less qualified to be a founder. as a founder, you're required to just know everything that is running the business. And you don't need to be an expert on everything, but it's important for you to understand it and then understand what you want to be doing, what you're good at doing, and then where you need to hire people. So that's an ongoing learning process as well. So it's been the three of us doing stuff for now, but now we really understand what each of our points are where we just don't love doing it and we're not super great at it. So let's hire somebody who loves doing it and is great at it.
And what is your tip? I mean, there is no typical day, I guess, but like, what are some of the things that you're looking at every day within the business? Like as the founder, what are you doing in a business your size?
So, I mean, it's always checking sales and understanding what our sales were the day before and what drove that traffic. If there's anything that we did, if there's any press that came out, if there's any kind of influencer that posted that maybe gave us like a boost in something, because we want to recognize that and do more of it. Lots of kind of check-ins with the team. It totally depends at this stage. Right now, we just launched these 2 new flavors. And we also just launched cereal glitter, which is like
so cool. I saw this on your Instagram just before when I was like stalking you before the interview. What a cool idea.
Yeah. Which I'll have to send you some because it's perfect for beauty as well. We've been like putting it over lip gloss and like as eyeshadow, but it's an edible kind of all natural glitter and it turns the milk blue. So getting that out into the world and launching new products, we're about to do a huge round of seeding, figuring out what our kind of ad strategy is moving forward. I'm pretty anti Facebook, Instagram ads. I'd rather give money to creative projects that could help the business grow, but it's somewhat of a necessary evil. So it's also, again, talking to other founders and see what is working for them. And if you have to just kind of suck it up and figure certain things out, or if you really should be doing something new and innovative.
Totally. When you're launching new products, what are kind of some of the marketing things that like move the needle in terms of sales? Is it that influencer seeding, or do you still see like a good conversion from press coverage? Like what works?
Press definitely has an expiry date. Like it's really good to get the word out and it really helps legitimize everything that you're doing. So when you are reaching out to influencers, sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know, you get brand DMs all the time. But then when you throw the Vogue article in the DMs, they're like, oh, okay, this is like an actual legitimate brand. So press is extremely important for that reason. We were lucky enough to kind of come on the scene and make a splash and have this like kind of intense voice in the cereal space. So we got a lot of coverage when we launched, which was awesome. And now we're kind of working on that second round of coverage and what that looks like for the new flavors and for the glitter. But there's no one way to do marketing. It's all kind of, I mean, what's been really successful for us too is TikTok. We started off slow, it was super hard. We ended up on some weird parts of TikTok that were not super kind to us having a female cereal mascot, which was so ridiculous. But super problematic, honestly. Like it was a really weird issue we had not anticipated. But we just kind of kept at it. And then we started doing this thing called reverse stealing, where we would take our boxes and we would go to like CVS, Whole Foods, all of those stores and film ourselves putting the cereal on the shelf and being like, we're now at CVS. And then trying to check out with the cereal because we're not a SKU there. So it was always, it was one of those just like weird social experiments and it totally blew up. We got millions of views on quite a few of our posts there. And ever since then, TikTok has kind of flipped for us. So now we have almost 200,000 followers and it's been like 6 weeks of trying different things there.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
okay. That's awesome. Okay, so what else is working on TikTok? It's something that like I haven't cracked. I can't work it out. I feel like the founders that I talk to say that like once you kind of get in the groove of what the kind of content that you're posting, like TikTok likes to see the same kind of stuff from you over and over again. So like that consistency is really good. What else is working on TikTok? Is it just the sense of humor? Like that helps?
Education does well on TikTok. It's consistency, to be honest. Like you can be doing the same thing every single day and you're like, why isn't this working? And then you'll post the same thing the next day and it gets 10 million views. Like there's kind of the reason why it's drives people crazy. And then it also is making some people's careers at this point is because it is possible and it's also unpredictable. And I think it is that unpredictability of what's going to work that really drives people to keep trying. Where with Instagram, it's like you can be consistent, you can be doing all the right things, and Instagram's still only going to show your post to like 1% of the people who even follow you. And then if you pay to show it to more people, it doesn't convert in the same way. It doesn't do the same thing. And TikTok is like this kind of fun, just who cares kind of platform. It's like if you have to post every day, you can't like make a crazy polished video. It's really just about like trying as many things as you can.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Are you like quite involved in the content process? You've obviously got like such a great affinity for the brand and you are, you know, the visionary behind it. So does that translate into being like really hands-on with the content?
Definitely. I'm not going to take credit for all of it because our social media editor is hilarious and she will just post the weirdest things on there sometimes. I do not control anything she does. We talk about like certain skits and things that like could be funny, but I don't approve anything that she posts beforehand because I think it will kind of like, it's weighted to like have to then go back and edit everything. So I trust her to just kind of post whatever she thinks. So it's definitely like a group brainstorm and then she'll kind of go off. Sometimes she'll come to my apartment and we'll like do stuff together. Like I wanted to do the reverse stealing thing for a long time where I was like, let's just like, I'll go film you. CVS is around the corner. Like I'm just going to film you putting it on the shelf. And we didn't even call it reverse stealing. A lot of people who commented started calling it that. So then we made it a whole series. So it really just kind of happens. But yeah, you just have to not be afraid to try weird stuff.
That's great advice for generally everything on the internet. Don't be afraid to try weird stuff. It's like what picks up.
Yeah, I think food content does well, like recipes and things like that. Obviously, skincare and beauty is a huge, huge category. But yeah, it's been very not fun and very fun on TikTok. There's not really, the medium ground is where it's just kind of like, all right, either the video bombs or it like does super well. So it's really hard to know.
And you said that you started kind of like leaning into TikTok 6 weeks ago. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe it was a little bit longer. I mean, we've been doing it for a while, but I feel like the success that we've seen has really started to be consistent about 6 weeks ago. We're going to start talking about cereal glitter and like doing a lot more kind of fun stuff like that and maybe getting some chefs and more recipe things type involved in what we're doing. So
it's good to know that like there's still, you know, a lot of space for brands to still grow and build a following on TikTok. I feel like it's almost like you can think, oh, I'm already too late to the party, but it's great to see that you guys are still having great pickup so recently.
Yeah, never too late. Like I spend probably too much time on TikTok and I follow a lot of different creators that were having a hard time for a while and now millions and millions of followers, or like they started their TikToks only a few months ago and they had a really consistent theme that people liked and they're at 500,000 followers already. So it's absolutely still possible. I don't know for how much longer because I'm starting to see more and more brands pump advertising dollars in there with like consistent ads. But yeah, still the Wild West when it comes to blowing up on TikTok.
And for people who want to follow you and get in touch with the brand, where can they reach you and OffLimits?
Yeah, so my handle is my full name at Emily Elyse Miller. And then you can follow on Instagram at OffLimits and then everywhere else we're Eat OffLimits.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and for your story. You guys have done so much cool stuff and you're like only a year old, which is amazing. Can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Hope you enjoyed that interview. If you did, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks.